It's Meui here, and today I wanted to walk you guys through an insanely strong build on Bunny. You may have heard of this build. It's called the high voltage build. You hear that word kind of thrown around a lot. However, there isn't a whole lot of gameplay footage of this build. There's not a whole lot of information on it, and there's not a whole lot of min-maxing and showing kind of the potential of it. And I think the reason for that is it is a pretty expensive build to actually create, but I did go ahead and invest the time and effort into min-maxing this build so that I can show you guys how strong it is and kind of walk you through from start to finish everything that you need to know about it. So real quick in summary, this build essentially uses Bunny's high voltage mod, and what this does is it takes your lightning emission and changes the ability completely. So this is your ability that's usually a big circle AoE that's around Bunny, that the loud annoying noise, and it changes that ability so that it now only targets 3 targets at a time. However, the range is a lot higher on it and the damage is a lot higher on it. So if I take this off real quick, let me save this. So you can see our normal lightning emission, our radius here is 13.5, and our skill power is 233.2, and electrocution is 137.6. Now if I throw this on, our radius is going to bump up to 17.3 meters. Our skill power is now 335, and our electrocution is now 174. So the damage is a lot higher, the range is a lot higher. The only change is now you're only hitting 3 targets at a time. Now that might not sound great, but I'm going to show you guys why this doesn't really matter and why this is so much better than not using it. We'll get into some boss gameplay as well as dungeons and other stuff, and I'll show you guys the strength of this build. Also, another important note about this mod is that it does actually reduce the cooldown of this ability. So typically your cooldown is going to be 30 seconds. With high voltage, it's going to only be 22, so that kind of frees us up some mod slots to actually go ahead and put more damage into the build. So that is something that is important and is going to come into play. So first I'm going to go through all the modules that I'm using here, and there is 2 separate setups that I have here. One is for bossing, and one is for dungeons, and the mods that you're going to be swapping are shared polarity, so I'll show you that. But this build works amazing in both scenarios. This build can kill bosses extremely fast. It's not going to quite do as much as like a Glay or a Lepic, but it's going to do a lot of damage and you can kill all the bosses and like carry shitters. And then the dungeon build, this is going to get you through all the hard dungeons, all these special operations. You can hard carry all of it. You can basically 1v9 it. This is going to let you do all the other content in the game that isn't Colossus related. It's also going to let you open world farm whatever you want to farm. So between these 2 setups, you're going to be able to do literally all the content in the game at a very high efficiency. Alright, so starting with the boss setup, obviously, we have our high voltage here. So for this, you can pretty much put whatever your preference is. I know some people like the mid-air maneuvering. There's also the long-range grappling hook, the long-distance maneuvering. This is pretty good too for bosses. It lets you grapple their basically the weak points, so you can break them easier. This actually goes really freaking far, so this is a good tool. I do plan on leveling this up at some point, but right now I just have short sword just for the mod capacity. Now I'm going to start with just the simple stuff. So increased HP, this is going to let you be just tanky enough to kind of get through everything. Along with spear and shield for the boss setup, this is going to give you a little bit of defense. I found that these 2 mods together is enough to stay alive. With this build, you're going to be moving around a lot, so you don't have to be as tanky. And this kind of gives you enough survivability for the bosses that you're going to be fighting in this game. And then for our simple base damage mods, we're going to take first skill simplification. This is going to give us the most damage out of any of the mods. The max MP isn't really going to make too much of a difference, so don't worry about that. But this gives a ton of skill power. I've tested basically every combination, and this mod is super strong. So you definitely want to take this to get your base damage up. And then the other one that you're going to take is Electric Specialist. Pretty straightforward. This one gives you just a ton of flat damage. Again, I've tried this against all the other electric master, this and that, focus on an electric. This is the best combination right here, so you definitely want to take these two as your base damage. Now, after this, you're going to start looking into getting your range up a little bit. So in the boss setup, we're going to take one range mod, which is going to be skill expansion. This allows us to get some range and be able to get more procs on the boss without being way too close to him. And it also has no negative side effects. So we want to get our base damage. We want to get this to have some range on the boss, and this will make it a lot easier when we're actually fighting the boss. Now, after this, we're going to start speccing into crit. Now, crit is what you want to basically bring into the build at the end. That's kind of how you're rounding the build up. Now, you might think, why crit? Like, Bunny's crit is kind of low. When you actually stack all these mods together, it becomes ridiculous. You're going to be sitting at about 30-ish, a little more, crit chance on your lightning emission. And it zaps 3 times, so you get usually about 1 crit per proc of this. And then with all the crit damage that you're stacking, your crits are going to hit almost 5 times your normals. Now, why this is so important is, you know, a normal bunny build, you don't need all this crit, right? And you're going to be able to go through and wipe out most of the mobs in dungeons, things like that. But there is elites, there is bosses at the ends of dungeons, things like that, where you are going to slow down a lot. Now, this build doesn't have that problem because of the crit. Your burst damage is so much higher, and I'll showcase this, but it is so much quicker. This is going to let you run through hard dungeons significantly faster. It's going to let you run through any boss fight significantly faster, anything you're doing in the open world, whenever there's elites, the special operations, as those waves get higher and higher, the enemies get stronger and stronger. This crit and this crit damage is going to be what you need to actually kill those mobs. So it may not sound super important, but I'm going to show you guys this crit. It all stacks together, and it is freaking OP. And then for our last mod, we're going to take Dangerous Ambush. Now, this might seem a little weird to take into a boss fight, but the way this mod works is essentially if a boss isn't casting an ability on you, you're getting bonus damage from it. Even if you have aggro, there is a lot of times where you're going to get this bonus damage. So it is 100% worth using. And also, when you down a boss, you're getting an extra amount of skill power from the bottom portion here. Because it's immobilized, it's going to let you hit even harder procs from your ability. So this is a really good mod for bossing. It is the best one out of the choices we have. So you definitely want to take that. And then back to Spear and Shield. This 8% sounds kind of small. It's actually a huge damage boost. I did test it against, there's another mod, that, Iron Defense. So I did test it against this, and Spear and Shield was far superior in terms of damage. So you definitely want to take that. This is going to altogether give you insane damage. So your crit mods are the Skill Insight, Skill Concentration. These are just your basic ones. And then Emergency Measures and Frontline is going to help you round out the crit and make it just hit like a freaking truck. So I will show you guys that. And now I'm going to go through real quick the dungeon setup. There's only 2 changes you have to make, and they're shared polarities, so it's pretty easy to make that adjustment. Alright, so we're going to swap to the dungeon tab here. Pay attention to this slot right here, the Spear and Shield and the Dangerous Ambush. These are the 2 changes you're going to be making. So for your dungeon slot, you're going to want to add maximize range, and this is going to get you, it should get you to the cap or near the cap of 27 meters. And the reason this is so important in dungeons is because getting near that cap is going to let you run through the dungeon and literally kill everything without having to stray off this and that direction. You can basically get it 6 meters longer than her normal ability, and that may not sound like a lot, but it's actually significant to the point where you really like never have to like go off a beaten path to kill something. Your ability is just going to reach out and get it because their range is so ridiculous, and you're gonna have so much damage that things are just gonna die as you run by them. The other change here is going to be MP collector. This is going to just make the dungeon experience smoother in general. You'll have more dash time, so it just makes that feel better. And you don't really need all the damage in dungeons that you do in like a Colossus fight. So this is just is a kind of quality of life thing, but it also does speed up your dungeon run some. I would also just recommend running this setup here if you're doing like a special operation defense or anything in the open world. I would only use the boss setup if you're doing like a Colossus. Alright, and then before I get into the testing and showing you guys how hard this build actually hits in the laboratory here, and then we're going to go into a bossing and dungeons and stuff like that so I can kind of showcase things. This is the reactor that I'm using right now. You do want to try to get a little bit of either skill duration or skill cooldown, because you're going to have a tiny gap in the ability. So if you look here, my duration is 22.1 and my cooldown is 22. So the base duration is 20. So you're going to have a little 2-second gap there. You ideally want to make that up on your reactor. It should work out perfectly if you just get, I don't think you even really need a gold roll here, but just either duration or cooldown. Obviously electric singular, and then whatever gun you're using. Right now I'm just using the Thunder Cage, and then your second roll can be singular damage, electric damage, or skill crit damage. I wouldn't go with skill crit rate. I would try to go for one of the previous three. Those will be your most optimal in terms of damage. And then for components, I'm using 2-piece Supernova set just for the extra electrical damage. The reason I'm not using the whole set is because it forces a lot of shield onto your character, and shield is just pretty crap right now. So I'll quickly go through this, but I have MP recovery out of combat on this, and then the other Supernova piece I just stack defense, and I have electric resist. And then for this, just HP, MP, and MP recovery in combat. And then for this, we have HP, shield, and toxic. So you have to have shield on this piece, unfortunately. So that's kind of what I'm working with right now. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and just showcase the damage of this real quick. Obviously, it depends on your enemy's resistances, but I'll kind of show you the high end and the low end of this. So this is going to be your high end. You can see it is critting for 2.1 million on this. And then you have those bonus procs as well. And the non-crits are about 500k almost here. So you can see those crits really freaking hurt. It's about 4 times the damage of the non-crits. And then I'm going to run back over here. And I'll spawn something with higher resistances. I believe these have the highest resistances in the game, so we'll spawn one of these. Wait for the electricity to go up. And you can see we're critting for about 900k on these with 200k non-crits. So this is pretty much the lowest you're ever going to see if you're using this build. And it's still very rare that you'll see something this low. The resist on this is extremely high, so I just wanted to kind of showcase the high end and low end of this. But as I run through the dungeon and the boss, you'll kind of see what these actual numbers are. Alright, so we're going to do a Devour run real quick. Everybody's favorite boss, the Bully. He is weak to electricity, so it is going to hit a little bit harder on him than some of the other bosses. But you guys kind of see Lepix and Glaze speedrunning this all the time, so I figured it'd be kind of a good comparison. You're obviously not going to kill as fast as those, because this build is much more diverse. It can do a lot of things, so the damage is still really ridiculous. Another important thing to note is my gun is optimized for a Glay, so it is not doing a whole lot. Alright, and that's the Devourer. The reason I'm hopping around is to get the damage from the ground pound, basically, because that can actually crit and do pretty good damage too. And then just moving around is proccing that lightning, right? So jumping is part of that. Jumping and moving around is going to proc your lightning more often. We can pull this up real quick. So it's an 18-second Devourer kill on a bunny. That's pretty damn good. You know, it's not as fast as a Lepic or a Glay, but this build is insane. You can also, if you utilize weak points correctly with other bosses, you can kill them in under a minute. The build is super competitive when it comes to bossing. And now I'm going to show you guys how strong it is in dungeons as well. Alright, so I showed you guys the boss side of this. It's very competitive in all the bosses. Devour is just kind of a good one to showcase it. And now I'm going to show you guys how strong this is in dungeons as well. If I can get a decent roll here. Probably should have done this before I started recording, but that's okay. Alright, so we'll go with this. And we'll try to get an energy activator blueprint here. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do here is obviously switch to our dungeon setup for that extra range and the MP collector. And let's get through this. I may speed this section up a little bit so you guys don't have to sit through the whole thing. I'm also not really going for a speed run here, but I want to show you guys kind of the power and simplicity of this build. Just going through dungeons in general. So you can see, even with the reduced damage, not using as many damage mods, I'm hitting, you know, nearly 1 million crits on these enemies here. I'm going to go ahead and speed this section up a little bit for you guys. Alright, so we finished with the LARPing. We're going to move on. Not a whole lot of enemies spawn there, but move on to the next section here. You can see these enemies are just melting. We're getting some MP collector to help us move through the dungeon quicker. And then in these more populated spots, we obviously get more procs of that. So the range on this is ridiculous. You can see just how far this is going to actually hit these enemies here. And the crits are proccing a lot. You will get a lot of crits once you max this build out. And the reason you're seeing a little bit lower numbers than the 900k and stuff is because we're using the dungeon setup. So with the extra range, that's going to be minus 20%, which is negligible in anything except the Colossus fight. So that's why we don't worry about that, because you can see everything is still melting. And then we're also using MP collector instead of the I forget the name of it, but the mod that's basically doing another like 25%. It's literally, it's this easy. Everything just melts, including the elites here. I believe we're almost at the boss here. You can literally just walk by pretty much everything and it's going to die behind you, if not in front of you. So this is where the boss is going to spawn. And we're almost at the 40k threshold to get the bonus too. Because keep in mind we're on a 220% multiplier. So there's a bunch of like modifications making these enemies stronger too, and it just doesn't matter. So the boss already is in his first immunity phase. I wasn't even looking at him. This pops his orbs. You just jump around. You can shoot your gun if you want to. You'll still get procs, but I just kind of want to showcase how powerful this is just by itself. Okay. And his orbs are gone. We're just jumping. You can hit him with the ground pound too. It does pretty good damage. And that's it. Dungeon cleared. And we can check the time on that. 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Not even, you know, going for a speed run or anything like that. You can clear every single dungeon like this. They're all pretty much effortless to clear. You can clear them faster than pretty much any other build. I haven't seen another build that can go faster, including Bionic Fuel, because of several different reasons. But this build is going to get you through faster than Bionic Fuel. It's going to be more diverse, and you can use this literally for all the content in the game. You can take this into the wave defenses and clear, you know, wave 21 on the wave defenses, no problem. I've done it a couple times and put up like 2 to 3 billion damage. It's ridiculous. You just hop around and melt everything. So that's pretty much it for the high voltage build. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, please feel free to leave comments. I'm also going to leave a link to an image of the modules that I used and a Reddit thread that I posted with the build as well. If you guys want to just check it out there, if you don't want to go back in the video and find those. So all that's going to be in the description, as well as timestamps for everything. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope this helped. I will be making future videos. Next one's probably going to be a Glay one. So stay tuned for that. I appreciate you guys watching. I'll catch you in the next one.